feel free to disable it. It's all up to you. So there should be a little thing going off that it's recording now, I think. Yeah, all good. All right, welcome to this late early hours of the day for a very, very good meeting. So before jumping into it, do we all want to say a quick introduction so we all know who everyone is? Just a small, like, little 10-second intro.
Sure.
Everyone is like, no. Please don't. I can start if you want. So yeah, I'm Jonas, and I'm a software engineer from Postman, where I work full time on AsyncAPI. Based here in Denmark. That's me. Who want to go next?
I can go next. I'm Alex, also based in Denmark. I work at the Lego Group as a software engineer, working on a product that uses both Open and Async API.
Cool. I'll go. I'm Michael. I'm based in New Zealand. I work for one of the telcos here as an architect.
Hi, I'm Lorenz. I'm also a backend engineer, and I have a small Kotlin AsyncAPI project. That's why I'm here.
Hi, I'm Shovet. I live in India and I also work for Postman and currently working on AsyncAPI full time. Yeah.
Okay, and my name is Pavel, and I'm maintainer of Java bindings and JetBrains IDS plugin.
Nice, got all around. All right, so kicking off this meeting, does anyone have anything they would like to bring up before we get into it? Or something they want to add to the agenda?
Schemas validation and what to do with issues, which I still receive in a repo related to validation issues in our studio, in Visual Code extension, in my plugin for JetBrains, and how to solve it and define single point of trust to all our examples, for example.
Yeah, that would be lovely. The amount of trouble we've had where I am at with, oh, but it works in the studio. And then you're like, but that's because it doesn't validate like this specific thing that we actually validate.
Oh man, I just solved this issue. Just
Yeah.
need to do one more approve and ready to go.
All right, so I am gonna add it to the agenda, but otherwise, I think so. I don't want to get technical here, at least not in this meeting. Like, there's nothing about implementations, nothing about what something that's missing or something specific that we want to like in a specific repository. I think I want to suggest that we focus on what we're trying to do, how we're going to do it, how does it look like going forward, what are we going to focus on, how it's going to be structured, more abstract, but we can definitely take it up in the end, depending on how much time we have. How does that sound?
I think it's perfect.
Yep. All right, so why are we here? Who want to answer it?
Looks like we all of us are developers of editors and tools for our stack on different languages, and looks like it's time to try to synchronize and brainstorm how to. Sorry,
No worries.
I'm not fluent.
No worries.
Okay, looks like it's time to synchronize and try to decide what to do next and how to improve user experience with our specification and how to fill left gaps and provide best tools for our specification.
Anyone else?
What Pavel said.
Maybe also provide a
perfect.
set of official tools that people can trust on, right? So that we have it under one roof, and then people can actually use those official libraries to build more stuff, especially to improve usability.
Michael?
Yeah, I guess in
thinking?
the .NET space, what I was hoping to get was sort of auto documentation of code. So at the moment, we have a library that lets you auto-generate documentation, but you still need to write a lot of code to make that happen. So in the Swagger space, you kind of just drop this library in and documentation comes out. So that's what I'd like to get to with AsyncAPI as well.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I agree. Yep. Yeah, the entire idea was that we could form together a group so we don't solve those problems in containers or in silos, and that we can help each other in both those specific areas where it might be something in the spec that's weird, something that doesn't make sense. Maybe it's implementation wise that's hard to figure out. But with a common goal of actually providing essential building blocks to interact with AsyncAPI documents. So anyone is able to create tooling around it, regardless of which ecosystem, regardless of what version they're using of AsyncAPI. So everything becomes more coherent. That's at least my vision for what to achieve. And I don't know if you all seen, we have official working groups now in AsyncAPI. So I would suggest that we try and form one where we try and describe exactly in those words, or not in those words, but more in a vision type, like what are we trying to solve? Maybe not how, but just the general problem statement. Then form the group, and then, at least in this meeting as well, figure out how we want to do it. How do we want to structure it? How do we want to achieve it? What's the specifics that we want to do in the terms of, is it only parsers? Is it validation focused? Is it builders? So you're able to both build AsyncAPI documents from tools. Maybe it's including code first tools. Like, where's the scope? I don't know how you all see it.
Yeah, I think for at least from my perspective, so I came from OpenAPI, right? And I think that probably most people come from OpenAPI and then sort of moved slowly into async. But originally it was a lot of the same, and it sort of moved away from that, at least from a specification perspective. And I think what would be nice, as Michael also kind of got into, is that it would be nice to have a similar tool set and interface as OpenAPI has. So it's as easy when people go from like a traditional sync way of thinking into the async world, they have a nice place to be and they know exactly what they're doing because it's so similar already. And then from that point onwards to, if you have a library in whatever language and you're switching to some other product in some other language, it would be really nice if the knowledge transferred, not just the spec side, but also the implementation. at least as much as you can, right? Because there's idioms in different languages that just differ so much that it doesn't make sense. But I think for most things, object oriented esque, I think it's holy crap. I think it's it would be nice. Hold on, I'm gonna turn on the lights again.
It's just telling you to go to sleep.
There we go.
I agree completely. Yeah.
For me, it's more about see around and check current integrations. For example, with Migrox, API Courier from Red Hat, and other folks. Because looks like for now they are a little bit buggy, and it's hard to use current version in our integrations. And for me, firstly, it's all about how to repair it as fast as is possible, and provide next level. I don't know how to tell it correctly. Not next level shit. Okay. Something new. Okay, everyone has OpenAPI, but looks like no one is using Cloud Events or Event Catalog for asynchronous APIs. Also as Migrox or Schema Registry from API Courier or from Confluent to optimize as much as it possible all stages of your development. And also will be cool to update and reinvent our studio, or maybe support my editor to craft something similar to Postman for local development of our specification, and to provide ability to configure brokers from your machine and to deploy some kind of infrastructure blocks.
So let me see if I get it correctly, Pavel. So you're really focused on the integration part about the entire ecosystem, and not only ecosystem, but also the entire lifecycle of when you develop apps. It's about the entire developer experience for developers using AsyncAPI that has all the tools that they need, API-Curo or whether it's Microx. All of those tools are easily usable and expected in the terms of like outcomes from it. For example, it shouldn't be that in one tool, an AsyncAPI document is invalid and in another is valid, right?
Yeah, first, yep. And secondly, it's really strange that that users can use our specification at Migrox, but here are some issues with RabbitMQ, for example, with Binix for RabbitMQ, for example, for Binix, for Kafka, and it's something interesting for me because we also, as folks from Migrox, announced that everyone can use our specification inside their solution, and for now, for me, it's not true. Because here are still some bugs which must be resolved to fix user experience. Because right now I can't, without fix, mock RabbitMQ, for example. I need to patch Migrox locally, and after that rebuild it, and only after that mock Rabbit.
I want to mention also here now that it's basically being brought up as well. We are gonna looking like there's gonna be multiple working groups. So for example, Pavel, what you're talking about with integrate like UX development in terms of developer experience from multiple tools and how they integrate and how they interact with each other. There's a specific working group just for that as well, actually. So I think it's all about finding a balance about what we are trying to solve and what multiple working groups also trying to solve, where everything kind of flows together.
Is there somewhere where those working groups are documented now, so we can?
Yeah, let me
see that?
let me send you some links, because there's right now there's one working group that has been accepted, and then there is another one in the works. Let me send you the first one. So there is this one here, which is all about developer experience. Then there's a second one that is currently being discussed, which is community growth. It might not be that relevant to this conversation, but it's still there. I would suggest that what we try to vision here and focus on is those fundamental blocks that every tool needs in order to build tools around AsyncAPI.
I think that's also very much in line with what Pavel said, right? Because it's if all of the libraries, or at least a bunch of them that are used generically across the tooling, have the same support and have the same validation and has the same everything, all of those problems will hopefully go away, right, by themselves, at least some of them.
Yep, for sure. Maybe it's also a good idea to mention now, we are, at least we're trying to get in contact with multiple platforms, also to get a connection with those that actually build, for example, Epicuro or Postman or other platforms, to form like a connection, so we can also get that feedback. For example, like, do you need help integrating with a parser that we have, or with a tool, or how can we unify that developer experience, for example? So that's something that's also going on in the parallel, but it's kind of out of scope for this meeting. What does a fundamental building block mean to you? I think we can go around, like around, and maybe try and define it on our own.
For me, okay, looks like it's our JSON schema, because I think that everyone is using it like a reference to implement correctly bindings or other pieces. And it's really strange that we still have issues with schemas, that we provide two different solutions with different flows for validation. I mean, single specification can be valid in our CLI tool, but also can be invalid in our studio, for example. And it's something interesting for me, and I think that we must do something with it to provide correct single point of trust, because it's for me it's a pain in the ass, because I don't know how to implement low-level bindings for Java correctly, to provide them to other folks from Specmatic, for example, or other internal enterprise solutions. And I can't be sure that I have implemented it correctly, because I don't know where to validate, in Studio, in CLI, or through JSON schemas.
Good point. Yeah. Who's next?
I can go next. I think for me, it's all about the libraries. So the base cornerstone of those implementations. Because everyone, I mean, if we look at most tooling today, it's either Node, i.e. JavaScript, TypeScript, whatever. And at least in my part of the woods, it's .NET, Rust, and maybe Java. I work in big enterprise, right? So that's generally what we use. But for us, it's been a huge pain that nothing existed, which is why we ended up doing it ourselves. So having these building blocks and having them equate to each other, at least for me, is a fundamental thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of coming from the same place where when I started my library, I needed all the classes for the spec, and there wasn't a project that did that, so I had to go and run through the documentation and type out all the classes and stuff. So it'd be nice if we just kind of provided all those really base libraries, like here's the spec in your language, and it's in a dozen languages. So if you need to instantiate a specification, it's that part at least is done. And then you get into the other stuff like the builders or generators and parsers and stuff. I guess I am kind of curious about how we see this group versus the developer experience group, because it seems like there are there's a lot of overlap there, right?
Yep. There's going to be a lot of overlap in a lot of places, I think. But it's something we can always figure out how we're going to do. And it might be that and we have Pavel here as well, who is already part of that developer experience. So it's like trying to spearhead certain working groups in order to solve very specific problems. It also might be, for example, that we split this one out into more specific things if need be, for example. So yeah, good question.
And also we need new studio or visual editor, because it's really hard to work with components. With components library, when you are trying to build a new specification from predefined blocks, it's unreal to do in Studio and really hard to implement in JetBrains or VS Code, because we still don't have standard form to define a component, for example, server, channel, and it's okay when you are trying. Hold a minute. I need to think how to tell it correctly. Okay, it's okay when you're working with specification inside JetBrains, for example, because I can build index and try to define which reference, what each reference represents, which component. But it's unreal and something like holistic to try to analyze external components, and it's our weak point with plenty bugs in case of recognition. I'm not sure that I described correctly my pain. So I mean, you can have a bunch of channels outside in external files, and without standard annotation or maybe field inside that references, it's really hard to tell to JetBrains or Visual Studio Code or other editor how to validate or how to complete a reference component. And looks like it's important to provide right tool to work with our specification, also as provide right tool to reuse common paths and to try to speed up adoption and decrease time needed to creation of new specifications.
What I wrote down was basically like it's hard to build AsyncAPI files. It's hard to like in visual editors, and then it's hard to handle references. Is that correct? And of course, probably multiple other things under that. But yeah, references is a huge one. And it's
I mean, just the fact that the RFC we reference is not live anymore. Yeah, it got closed.
Let's just see. References is almost like a whole working group in itself.
Yeah,
but let's see what we can do.
Yeah, but I mean, also just since we're there anyway, just the fact that we have this JSON reference thing, and then we have YAML, which has a different reference structure. So what is supported? Do we only support JSON references? Yes, technically, because it's part of the spec, but YAML also has references. So how do we do both?
Great questions.
So much fun. But I guess this is part of what we can start discussing, right? With how do we see that as library authors? Can we just at least agree on some level that makes sense for everyone?
And even if something doesn't make sense, it's always something that we can change. So, for example, references is one of those things that I've been looking into. I think it was last year, and it's a pit, like it's a rabbit hole without question, and even implementation is gonna be rough. But I think we need to discuss it. For example, it needs to come up.
Yeah,
Lorenz, do you have anything what's your vision for building blocks?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it also starts with language level stuff, but I think we need to have some common libraries that basically do serialization and deserialization in the language models, and in my case, it's JSON because it's easier to produce. But I think, at least from where I'm coming, for most people, it's also essential to have an integration into application frameworks, because I think no one actually uses their standalone language applications. For Java, it's always Spring Boot or something like this. And we also talked about OpenAPI. I think most developers actually don't care about OpenAPI. They just have like the standard Spring integration and everything gets generated. And I think it would be really good for adoption to have something similar.
Yeah. I think it closely relates to how things are in .NET, right? Because when you do any web applications, it's .NET Core. You don't really use any other thing, right? Where in Java, it's generally Spring now, right? Always.
I think the challenge that I see is that there's not one way of doing the async part. So, like, let's say you use RabbitMQ. There's the RabbitMQ client library, but there's nothing that prescribes how you should publish or how you should subscribe. And so then actually producing documentation for like, this is what's being published. And that seems to be the same across kind of all of the, all the different bindings. Like there's no standard like messaging framework for the language. So
no.
It's a bit of a challenge.
Java, at least they have something like a driver library to message brokers. I think it's called Java Messaging System JMS, something like this. It's like something similar to what you have for databases, right? You have a JDBC, and then every database like Postgres, MySQL has to write the driver for this API that you can use for the language. I'm not sure if people really want to go into this, but I think this would be something that is necessary to really auto-generate every part of the documentation. And this doesn't exist yet.
Oh, and I think the bindings are also of varying quality for generating client and server side stuff from them. I think most of them were created from like a client side, but in reality, they might actually need to be a server side thing, right? Or at least this is what our producer is saying that it wants to adhere to. Here is a binding, do with it what you want. Now you know. But I don't know if all of the bindings have been created like this.
Yeah, so all of the bindings were from, we don't even have to go into it, but yeah, it's been a while. They've been, and they are not stable. I completely agree. Sui, do you have anything for?
For our case, the thing we discussed, right, like to have tools, right, that could support like others who are building parsers. Right? It's like we give the building blocks for others to build whatever they want. So that's what I was like before.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good list. This is a very good list. Love it. Oh yeah, by the way, everything is so I'm gonna make either an issue or a discussion somewhere where I'm gonna write down notes from the meeting. So for example, there's no decisions here. Even if, let's say, for example, one of us misses a meeting, it's not gonna affect whether you have an opinion on specific matter because everything is gonna be in issues and decisions is gonna be taken based on that. So I'm gonna write everything down. Then for the next meeting, we can pick it up exactly where we left off, or if something needs to be rediscussed or something came up, or yeah. So I love it. All right. So what I wrote so far is what we mean about fundamental building blocks is basically JSON schema documents in the terms of validation. They need to be standardized, and it needs to be the same experience for the developer, regardless of what tool you use. Then we have libraries in the terms of we need those cornerstones of implementations in different languages. So it's not just JavaScript. Then we have something about visual editors, like building AsyncAPI documents is still hard. And we still don't have the right fundamental tools to build AsyncAPI documents. Then we have references, and working with references is hard and it's complex and its behavior is shit. Let's call it that. Then we have something about serialization and deserialization in the terms of Lorenz. It was in the terms of like getting, I guess, get the AsyncAPI document out from memory or like vice versa, or was it specific about like message validation or message serialization? And
I mean, the really low level start is always getting into like the language model that you can start working with it in the language.
Okay, yeah. So fundamental build it basically libraries to build. Yeah. Then I have integration with different frameworks because rarely anyone builds apps from the ground up without some kind of helper framework or tools. And then I have varying quality of bindings. Basically, it's hard to use the bindings and it's hard to even use them in production. And then, well, basically parsers and fundamental tools in the terms of interacting with AsyncAPI documents. Did I miss anything? Or did someone come up with something new? Okay. Cool. So let's see. I can't remember what else we needed to. I think we're pretty much aligned actually in the whole scheme of things. How do we want to structure this working group? How do we want to work? Or how do we want to play? Let's use that instead. So there is, regarding working groups, as far as I recall, there should be Let me see if I can find it. There is a very specific document explaining how to set up working groups. And I'm gonna send it here in the chat. Yeah, there. So basically, we have all the prerequisites for requirement for creating a working group. We need to figure out who want to be they use the chairperson, appointed chairperson. So I guess we need one that manages the meetings, manages the what's it called? What's the word for it? I can't remember in English. It's like a what's the word for a chairperson? It's a weird name.
Child of the sun. Gonna go with North Korean style.
I don't want to say dictatorship because it's not, but we just need someone that has like that directs the outcome, so to say, like direct the effort, like set up meetings, make sure we have meetings. Yeah, and I kind of don't want it unless none of you all want it. I'll do it. But yeah, does any of you want to be the chairperson?
Yeah, I think that it can be you.
Congrats!
Yeah, Jonas.
It can only be you.
You did it.
How about we rotate the role? Let's do that. I think some of the others actually rotate the role, but let's figure it out.
Oh, sorry, I'm going through a tunnel.
Yeah. All right, fine. I'll take it and we can take it up again in a month or so and see if any of you want to, or if someone else comes along.
Or you can tell us when you're about to kill yourself, and then we can talk about rotating.
That's fair. I'll promise I'll do that before that happens. Yes, I'll promise you that.
Lovely.
All right. So, meetings. I have a feeling that we're going to do a lot of meetings in the beginning and not so much implementation, not so much that specific in order to get everything rolling. So here in the beginning, does it make sense to have either bi-weekly or weekly meeting, just an hour meeting?
I think with the time zones, maybe bi-weekly is a bit easier to. I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of New Zealand and India now, because everyone else is Europe-based, but having meetings often that are outside of normal hours sucks. So the fewer the better is my general thinking, at least.
My suggestion would have been that we switch time zones. So each, for example, let's say we did weekly, for example, then it would be every second week would be now, and the other would be like 12-hour shift almost. Which does mean that some people will not be joining every call probably, but that's why we have the issues and we have the discussions there.
As long as it's at the start or the end of the day, it's pretty much fine, because we are the opposite side of the world. It's when you do it in the middle of the day that it becomes problematic. But then that's the problem for India, because India's halfway in between. So
yeah. Yeah, I don't think that Suvik would mind if it's a little bit earlier. And I don't know about you, Pavel, either. Maybe a few hours earlier. I don't know what time that is for you, Mike.
It's
What's a
12 a.m.
Yeah, what's a few hours earlier for you, Michael?
At the moment, I'm 12 hours exactly from you guys. So if you do 7 p.m. at 7 a.m.,
Oh,
Okay.
that will change in about a month. Daylight saving and stuff, but
Right. So if we did 8 a.m. or for you 8 a.m., would that be too much
Yeah.
or too
that's fine.
Okay. We can at least move it an hour. I think. Can we move it more? Or does that like
Yeah, I could probably do until 6. Once you get to 5, it's a bit of a problem.
okay. So is
So it'll
everyone
be 6
fine
p.m.
with
for you guys.
how does everyone feel about those times? 6, 7 p.m. It's like what, 4 hours, 3 hours earlier? We can make it as a suggestion and let's see.
yep.
Do we want to stick to bi-weekly? So every second week?
Can I make a suggestion?
No.
Damn. Okay.
Of course. Always.
No. No, I was gonna suggest a sort of a working document of all of the issues we've had through time that hasn't been fixed yet. Just so we have all of it on paper, and then we have, when we get to implementation stuff, we get to categorize it and figure out maybe there's some commonalities across everything. Maybe there's not, and then it's just free for all and fuck it. But just to sort of get all of those, there's issues over here and there's issues over there, and we have issues with references, and we have issues with YAML and everything in between, just to sort of get it off the table and into somewhere where we can start to, I don't know, do something, make checkboxes at them or whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're gonna do bi-weekly meetings, then we'd want to have some sort of homework between them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just going to be too slow. So
Yeah.
there's sort of like a bi-weekly sync, but then there's async work happening behind.
Yeah.
I would suggest we use GitHub projects. So GitHub has this functionality. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with it. It's basically Kanban board, but it's free to play in the terms of like you can add whatever items you want on it. And you can create issues based on those specific tasks or like issues. So we have a place for everything. So we also maybe have a list of actionable items every week, like we move around in terms of what are we discussing next week or the week after, for example. So everyone knows exactly where to look and where everything is. I would probably suggest that we use something like that.
Yeah. We can also create like shadow issues that doesn't exist anywhere outside of the project, which is cool.
Yep. What was I thinking? So I want to make it as a challenge, more or less, to see it as what if we had a clean slate? We don't have any tools. We don't have, like, for example, we don't have existing tools. We don't have a official JavaScript parser. We don't have Sonter. We don't have the Lego library. We don't have any of the tools. What is the best, both from a developer developer experience standpoint, but like if we had a clean slate, what would it look like? Because that is possible. And so it's more, I guess that's kind of the actionable item I want to suggest that we do for next time. Like, what does a clean slate look like? Or the optimal. setup look like? I think.
I have one question. Maybe you guys know that. What does Backstage actually use under the hood? Because they also they have some integration there. Are they using something from AsyncAPI or something?
I think they are, and they are using. Isn't it React based? Either with Next or yeah. I did look slightly into it, but actually I think I have even a plugin here. Let me see. I know, might I deleted it. Can't remember.
Yeah, because I was thinking maybe it makes also sense just to get their opinion, because I think they are probably one of the biggest projects that are integrating with AsyncAPI. So maybe they also have some pain points and some experience there.
Definitely a good idea or Backstage opinion. Yeah, we can have a lot of those calls as well with different either open source communities or, for example, also microbes. Make sure that we, for example, know their pain points in the terms of parsing, validation, or what else, like fundamental building blocks they have. Because I think they have their own implementation as well in the terms of parsing async API files. So yeah, good idea. Like it. All right, so we have a few more minutes. Pavel, before we talk about the agenda item that you had, I just want to round it off. And so what I'm going to do after this, or tomorrow morning probably, I'm going to make a discussion in the community repo, and I'm going to link you all to it, where I'm going to make the suggestion of an official working group. And under that, I'm also going to add the agenda that we discussed, the things that we suggested to be actionable or that we take into like a decision of, for example, meetings, how we're going to work, etc. And that also gives everyone else a chance to comment on those specific approaches or what we discussed here. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. Other than this, what would be our roles in the working group? Like, what will we be doing?
What do you mean rules?
Roles. Like, what will our day-to-day role look like as a working group member?
Can you repeat the question or rephrase it?
Like, what will our day-to-day roles look like? Like, what are we gonna do day-to-day as a working group member?
I don't think there is going to be any roles unless we decide to have some.
I mean, we do have one.
We have one, but that's forced. But yeah, we do have one. But other than that, there is no difference between, for example, me and you. There's no difference between Pavel and me and Michael and Lorenz. Like it's very, can we call it democratic?
So we basically create roadmaps, like what we're gonna focus on.
Yeah, and also everyone is gonna have different priorities. They're gonna have different time schedules. They're gonna have different commitment, like how much time they can invest into it. So everything needs to be, well, basically how the open source works. Like everything has to be respected in that terms. And I think it's something that we figure out as we go also. Maybe. At least that's my opinion. I don't know if someone else has a different answer.
Does anyone here not like democracy?
Careful, man. It's an international audience.
Let's not get into that discussion. All right, moving. Vic, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Otherwise, also, if you have questions afterwards, the discussion I'm going to create, just fire them in there, and then we can always bring them.
Sure.
All right, Pavel. Did you want to bring anything up, or do you think, or did we already get across it? What you wanted to bring up in the beginning?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I need to think.
Yeah, no worries. Does any of you have anything you want to finish off the meeting with?
I think that it will be better to write to our discussion, because it's hard for me for now to speak. It's better to
Yeah, no
write.
worries. That's exactly also why we have the discussions afterwards, because it's a perfect way to sync up afterward. No one else? Are we gonna end early?
We did it.
Hey, nice. All right. So yeah, thank you all for joining and wanting to participate. I can't wait and see where this goes. So yeah, thank you all. And oh yeah, next one is in 2 weeks. I'm just gonna same day, but 12-hour difference. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, nice meeting you all, and see you around.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
See you.
Bye.